She raised her like a real daughter, but they thanked her real mum instead of her at graduation, so she gave their $600,000 college fund to his niece instead. Hi, my beautiful family. May the Lord bless your heart with peace, your soul with strength, and your home with endless joy. May every closed door be replaced with a better one, and may love always find you. As I already told you, Binta and I have become proud grandparents. Our elder son, Will Peter, has been blessed with a beautiful baby boy. Binta is deeply happy, but a little upset with you all. She says many of you gave us baby name suggestions, but now we're looking for something truly unique and rare. So once again, we're asking from the bottom of our hearts. Suggest the most beautiful and uncommon baby boy name in the comments. The name that touches us the most will receive a special surprise gift from us. And if my stories still touch your heart, drop a comment. Yes, I'm with my brother, Mr. Peter. Please like, comment, and share this with love. We're not just telling stories, we're building a legacy together as one beautiful family. Love walked into Tracy Alaney Shannon's life, wearing a torn pink dress and clutching a one-eared stuffed rabbit like it held the secrets of survival. The October rain drummed against Tracy's windshield as she pulled up to the weathered foster home on Brookside Avenue. 28 years old with calloused hands and a heart that refused to harden despite everything she'd witnessed as a social worker, Tracy had seen enough broken places to know that hope sometimes lived in the most unexpected corners. Tracy adjusted her rearview mirror, catching her own deep brown eyes staring back, tired from another sleepless night of wondering if she was making the right choice. A single black woman adopting a white child in Richmond, Virginia in 2003. The whispers had already started at the Department of Social Services. "Baby girl, you sure about this?" her mother Indira had asked that morning, concern creasing her weathered face. Raising a child is hard enough without adding complications. Her sister Daphne had been more direct. "Tracy, honey, you got a good heart, but that little white girl's gonna grow up and choose her own kind. Don't set yourself up for heartbreak." But Tracy had felt it in her bones the moment she saw 3-year-old Elowen Sage Kelly's file photo, a pull so strong it nearly knocked the breath from her lungs. Those green eyes, wide with fear from being abandoned by the people who were supposed to love you most. The foster home's front door opened before Tracy could knock. Mrs. Rodriguez, the harried caseworker, appeared with flour in her graying hair and exhaustion painted around her eyes. "Miss Shannon, thank God you're here. She's been asking for you all morning." Tracy's heart stumbled. "She remembers me?" "Honey, you're the first person to visit her twice in 3 months. Course she remembers." Mrs. Rodriguez stepped aside. "These children, they got memories like elephants when it comes to kindness." They walked through a corridor that smelled of disinfectant and too many broken dreams. Children's voices echoed from somewhere deeper in the house, laughing, crying, existing in that space between families. "Now, I need to prepare you," Mrs. Rodriguez said, pausing outside a bedroom door marked with crayon drawings. Her biological parents, Maeve and Sterling Harper, well, the drugs took everything from them. Left that baby in a hotel room for 3 days before housekeeping found her. She don't talk much about it, but the nightmares still come. Tracy's hands clenched into fists. How could anyone abandon something so precious? The bedroom door creaked open, and there she was. Elowen sat cross-legged on a thin mattress covered by a faded Winnie the Pooh sheet, her blonde curls matted and tangled from restless sleep. Those green eyes, summer grass after rain, looked up with such desperate hope that Tracy felt her breath catch. The child clutched a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days, one ear missing, the pink fur faded to grey. "You came back," Elowen whispered, her voice barely audible above the rain. Tracy knelt down slowly, bringing herself to the child's eye level. "I promised I would, didn't I? But people promise lots of things." Elowen's small fingers tightened around the rabbit's remaining ear. "They say they'll come back. and then they don't. They say they love you, and then they leave you in scary places. The words hit Tracy like physical blows. 3 years old, and already an expert on broken promises. I do mean it, baby girl. When I make a promise, I keep it. I'm going to take you home with me today. I'm going to give you everything. Those green eyes searched Tracy's face with the intensity of someone much older, looking for lies, for disappointment, for inevitable abandonment. Instead, she found steady brown eyes that held nothing but truth and fierce love. "Everything?" Elowen asked, the word heavy with disbelief. "Everything," Tracy promised, her voice strong despite threatening tears. "A room with purple walls like you asked for last time, books to read together every night, pancakes on Saturday mornings, hugs whenever you need them, a mama who will never, ever leave you." "What about when I have the scary dreams, the ones where people disappear?" Tracy's heart broke clean in half, then reformed itself around this child's pain. "I'll chase them away, every single one. I'll sit by your bed and tell you stories until the sun comes up, if that's what it takes." Elowen studied her for another long moment, those wise green eyes taking in every detail of Tracy's face, as if memorizing it, storing it away against future disappointments. Then, slowly, she held out her free hand, small, pale, trusting. "Okay, but Rabbit comes too. He's been taking care of me, and I promised I'd take care of him." "Rabbit definitely comes too. We never leave family behind." The word family hung in the air between them, like a bridge being built, plank by plank, promise by promise. As they walked toward Tracy's modest Honda Civic, Elowen's small hand warm and surprisingly strong in hers, Tracy made silent vows. This child would never know hunger again. Never sleep in a strange bed wondering if anyone loved her. Never doubt that she was wanted, cherished, worth every sacrifice. The drive home was punctuated by Elowen's careful questions, each one revealing uncertainty. "Will I have my own toothbrush?" "Yes." "Can I pick what we have for dinner sometimes?" "Of course." "Will you still like me if I cry?" "Always." Tracy carried Elowen's few belongings, 2 plastic grocery bags containing 3 outfits, a worn picture book about a lost kitten finding its way home, and a plastic cup with princesses on it, up the stairs to their small apartment. It wasn't much. 1 bedroom for Tracy, a converted den that would become Elowen's room, 1 bathroom, and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was clean, safe, and most importantly, home. "This is your room," Tracy said, opening the door to reveal walls she'd painted soft lavender over the weekend, a twin bed with a patchwork quilt her mother had sewn, and a bookshelf already filled with stories waiting to be discovered. Elowen stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the concept of ownership, of permanence. It's really mine? Just mine?" "All yours, sweetheart. Every purple wall, every book, every corner where you want to play or read or just be quiet." That night, after a dinner of spaghetti with butter, Elowen's choice, and careful conversation about favorite colors and what she wanted to be when she grew up, "A doctor so I can fix people who are broken," Tracy tucked her new daughter into bed. "Tracy," Elowen's voice came out small in the darkness. "Yes, sweetheart." "What if you change your mind? What if you decide I'm too much trouble?" Tracy sat on the edge of the bed, smoothing the quilt over Elowen's thin shoulders, feeling the rapid beat of a heart that had learned to expect abandonment. "Elowen Sage Kelly," Tracy said firmly but gently, "I have been waiting my whole life to be your mama. There's nothing in this world, nothing that could make me change my mind about loving you." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the sound of rain against the window and 2 hearts learning to beat in sync. Then, barely a whisper, "I love you too, Mama Tracy." Later, after Elowen's breathing had evened into deep rhythm, Tracy sat at her small kitchen table with a notebook and calculator. She worked by lamplight, figuring numbers that didn't quite add up. Her salary as a social worker, $32,000 a year. After rent, utilities, food, and basic necessities for two people, there wasn't much left. But college was 16 years away. Elowen would graduate high school in 2019. If Tracy started saving now, worked extra jobs, sacrificed luxuries she'd never had anyway. She opened a new savings account the next morning. The first deposit was only $50, but she wrote on the deposit slip with careful precision, Elowen's college fund. Standing outside the bank in the crisp October air, watching Elowen trace patterns on the fogged car window, Tracy made another promise. This one to herself. That little girl would have choices. Real choices. The kind of future that came with education and opportunity and doors that opened instead of slammed shut. Whatever it took. However long it took. However much it cost. 16 years to build a future. 16 years to prove that love chosen was stronger than love inherited. 16 years to show this child that being wanted mattered more than being planned. Everything. She had promised everything, and Tracy Ailey Shannon was a woman who kept her promises. Chapter 2. Building Dreams. 5 years later, Love had learned to wake up at 5:30 a.m. and brew coffee strong enough to fuel dreams that seemed impossible on a social worker's salary. But Tracy Ailey Shannon had discovered that impossible was just another word for requires more creativity. Standing in her small kitchen at dawn, 33-year-old Tracy watched the sunrise paint Richmond's skyline in shades of gold while 8-year-old Elowen hummed Disney songs from her purple bedroom. The sound filled every corner of their apartment with pure joy, the kind that made Tracy's bone-deep exhaustion feel like a small price to pay for paradise. The college fund sat at $23,847.32 after 5 years of meticulous saving. Every penny earned through sacrifices Tracy wouldn't trade for anything. "Mama, Tracy!" Elowen's voice carried the excitement that only Saturday mornings could bring. "Is it pancake day?" "It's pancake day, baby girl," Tracy called back, already reaching for the mixing bowl that had become as sacred as any altar in their sanctuary of chosen family. Saturday morning pancakes had evolved into something more than breakfast. They were dreams served on chipped plates, hopes syruped with maple sweetness, and conversations that built castles in the air, one forkful at a time. Elowen bounced into the kitchen wearing mismatched pajamas and a smile that could power the entire city. At 8, she was all knees and elbows and curiosity, her blonde curls finally tamed by Tracy's patient hands and YouTube tutorials. Those green eyes sparkled with the kind of confidence that comes from being loved unconditionally for 5 straight years. "I want to be a doctor today," Elowen announced, settling into her usual chair. "Dr. Elowen Kelly Shannon. That sounds important, doesn't it?" Tracy's heart swelled. Somewhere along the way, her daughter had hyphenated their names, claiming Tracy's identity as part of her own. "It sounds perfect. What kind of doctor?" "The kind that fixes broken hearts, like you fixed mine." The spatula trembled in Tracy's hand. 8 years old, and this child could reduce her to tears with casual profundity. "Well then, Dr. Kelly Shannon," Tracy said, flipping pancakes with theatrical flair, "we better make sure you have everything you need for medical school." They ate their pancakes while planning Elowen's future, the colleges she'd attend, the lives she'd save, the difference she'd make. With each dream they built together, Tracy mentally calculated the cost and added another shift to her internal work schedule. After breakfast, while Elowen practiced piano, Tracy spread financial documents across her bed like battle plans. 3 jobs weren't enough anymore. Elowen was growing, needed more, Better clothes, school supplies, activities that would build the well-rounded resume colleges wanted. The knock on their door came just as Tracy was tallying numbers that refused to balance. "I'll get it," Elowen called, racing toward the front door. "Wait, baby, let Mama check first." Through the peephole, Tracy saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, black, with kind eyes and work-worn hands holding a toolbox. "Can I help you?" Tracy asked through the door. "Dorian Matthews, ma'am. Building management sent me to fix your front porch. Said it's been sagging for months." Tracy opened the door to find herself looking into the warmest brown eyes she'd ever seen. Dorian Sage Matthews stood on her rickety porch like he belonged there, his smile genuine and unthreatening. "About time," she said, stepping aside. "I was starting to think we'd fall through to the apartment below." "Can't have that," Dorian said, his voice carrying a hint of laughter, "especially not with this beautiful little lady here." Elowen peeked out with shy curiosity. "Are you going to fix our house?" "Going to try my best. What's your name, princess?" "Elowen Kelly Shannon. I'm 8, and I'm going to be a doctor." "Doctor? Elowen Kelly Shannon," Dorian repeated seriously. "That's quite a name for quite a future." Something in his tone made Tracy look at him more carefully. Most people talked to children like they were cute pets. Dorian spoke to Elowen like she was a complete person with important thoughts. "Mama Tracy, can I watch him work?" Elowen asked. "If Mr. Matthews doesn't mind, and if you stay out of the way. I'd welcome the company, but I should warn you, I might need a medical consultation if I hit my thumb with the hammer." Elowen giggled, and Tracy felt something shift in her chest. A door she'd kept locked for 5 years, creaking open just a crack. As the morning progressed, Tracy found herself glancing out the window more often than necessary. Dorian worked with quiet efficiency, explaining his process to Elowen in terms she could understand, treating her questions with genuine seriousness. "Why do you fix houses?" Elowen asked. "Because everybody deserves a safe place to call home," Dorian replied. "Homes are where love lives, where families grow, where dreams get built. When I fix a house, I'm really fixing all the love inside it." Tracy's throat tightened. This stranger understood something fundamental about what she was trying to build. Around noon, Tracy brought Dorian a glass of sweet tea. Their fingers brushed as he accepted the glass, and Tracy felt electricity shoot straight to her core. "Thank you," he said, holding her gaze longer than necessary. "Your daughter's special, smart as a whip and curious about everything." "She's my heart," Tracy said simply. "I can see that. And she's lucky to have a mama who loves her so completely." The way he said "mama" made Tracy's defenses crumble a little more. "What about you?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Family?" "Not yet. Still looking for the right woman to build something beautiful with." His eyes held hers steadily. "Someone who understands that love is about showing up every day, especially when it's hard." Heat flooded Tracy's cheeks. Was he talking about her? By evening, the porch was solid as bedrock, and Dorian was packing up his tools while Elowen chattered about her day at school, her piano practice, her dreams of medical school. "Dr. Elowen's going to need a lot of education," Dorian observed. "We're saving for it," Tracy said, pride and worry warring in her voice. "Every penny I can manage goes into her college fund." "That's beautiful. Investment in dreams always pays the best interest." As he prepared to leave, Dorian turned to Tracy with something that looked like courage gathering. "I was wondering, would you and Elowen like to have dinner sometime? Nothing fancy, just good food and good company." Tracy's heart hammered against her ribs. She hadn't been on a date since before Elowen, hadn't even considered the possibility of someone else fitting into their carefully constructed world. I don't really date," she said finally. "Elowen is my priority. Everything I have goes to building her future." Understanding flickered in Dorian's eyes. I respect that. She's lucky to have someone so dedicated. After he left, Tracy sat on her newly solid porch while Elowen did homework. The evening air carried the scent of jasmine and possibility, but Tracy pushed the feeling away. She couldn't afford distractions. That night, she worked her second job, cleaning offices downtown from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. The work was mind-numbing, but every paycheck brought them closer to Elowen's dreams. By Wednesday, Dorian was back to fix a loose step. By Friday, he'd returned to address a squeaky door. Each visit brought easy conversation, shared laughter, and moments when Tracy forgot to guard her heart. "Mama Tracy," Elowen said one evening as Tracy tucked her into bed. "I like Mr. Dorian. He's nice to us." "He is nice," Tracy agreed carefully. "Do you think he could be our friend? Like a family friend?" The innocent hope in her daughter's voice made Tracy's chest tight. Elowen had never asked about having a father, but watching her with Dorian, Tracy saw something bloom in her daughter, a different kind of security. The following Saturday, Dorian appeared on their porch with a toolbox and a shy smile. "Nothing's broken," Tracy said, opening the door. "I was hoping maybe I could take you ladies to breakfast. That diner down on Broad Street makes pancakes almost as good as yours." Elowen appeared at Tracy's elbow like magic. "Can we, Mama?" "Please," looking down at her daughter's hopeful face, then up at Dorian's patient expression, Tracy felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. "Okay," she said softly, "but just breakfast." The diner was warm and crowded, filled with easy Saturday morning energy. Dorian ordered coffee black, Elowen got chocolate chip pancakes, and Tracy found herself laughing more than she had in years. "Tell me about medical school, Doctor." "Elowen," Dorian said seriously. "Well, first I have to go to college for 4 years, then medical school for 4 more years, then something called residency," Elowen recited with 8-year-old determination. "That's a lot of school. Your mama must be saving a fortune." "She works really hard," Elowen said with matter-of-fact pride. 3 jobs, so I can have everything I need." Dorian's eyes found Tracy's across the table. 3 jobs? Tracy shifted uncomfortably. Social work during the day, cleaning offices at night, catering on weekends. It's temporary, until the college fund is where it needs to be. "How much are you aiming for?" $600,000, Tracy said without hesitation. "Enough for undergraduate, medical school, living expenses, everything. I want her to focus on learning, not worry about money." The number hung in the air like a mountain to be climbed. Dorian nodded slowly, understanding the magnitude of what Tracy was attempting. "That's incredible. You're building her an entire future." "It's what mothers do," Tracy said simply. After breakfast, they walked through Maymont Park, while Elowen chased butterflies and climbed on playground equipment. The October air was crisp with promise, and Tracy found herself relaxing into the moment. "She's amazing," Dorian said. "You've raised someone special." "We're not finished yet. Still got 10 years of childhood left, then college, then whatever dreams come after that." "And what about your dreams?" The question caught Tracy off guard. "My dreams are her dreams." "But what did you want before she came along?" Tracy was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted to matter to someone, to build something beautiful and lasting, to love someone so completely that my whole life made sense." "Sounds like you got exactly what you wanted." "Yeah," Tracy smiled. "I did." As the sun began to set, Dorian walked them back to their car. The day had been perfect, too perfect. "Thank you for today," she said as they reached her Honda. "Elowen had a wonderful time." "What about you?" Tracy's breath caught. "I did too. But you can't afford distractions from building her future." "Something like that." Dorian nodded, understanding flickering in his expression. "I get it. She comes first. Always. But Tracy, you deserve happiness too." After they got home and Elowen was asleep, Tracy sat at her kitchen table with the college fund statement spread before her. The numbers were growing, slowly, painfully, but growing. $23,847.32 and counting. 11 more years until graduation, 11 more years of 3 jobs and every spare dollar going toward Elowen's future. But for the first time in 5 years, Tracy found herself wondering, what would it be like to share this burden? She pushed the thoughts away. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford. Elowen was her priority. Everything else was secondary. But as Tracy finally turned off the kitchen light, she found herself humming, something she hadn't done in years, something that sounded suspiciously like hope. The college fund would grow. Elowen's dreams would come true. Love could wait. 16 years total. 5 years down, 11 to go. Chapter 3. Shadows from the Past. The phone call that would change everything came on a Tuesday morning while Tracy was braiding Elowen's hair for school, both of them humming along to the radio like they'd done every morning for 9 years. 9 years that had flown by like a beautiful dream about to become a nightmare. Mrs. Shannon, this is Linda Cross from Child Protective Services. We have a situation regarding Elowen's case that requires your immediate attention. 37-year-old Tracy's fingers stilled in her daughter's golden curls. 12-year-old Elowen twisted around in her chair, green eyes immediately alert to the change in her mother's breathing. What kind of situation? Tracy asked, forcing her voice to remain steady. Maeve and Sterling Harper have petitioned the court for supervised visitation rights. They've been clean for 8 months, completed a rehabilitation program, and their attorney believes they have a strong case for reconnection. The words hit Tracy like ice water. Maeve and Sterling Harper, the names she'd hoped never to hear again, the ghosts from Elowen's past that had haunted Tracy's dreams. Mama? Elowen's voice was small, uncertain. Who are you talking to? Tracy covered the phone's mouthpiece, forcing a smile that felt like broken glass. Just work stuff, baby girl. Finish getting ready for school. But Elowen was too smart, too intuitive. She'd inherited her mother's ability to read emotional storms in the air. Mrs. Shannon, are you there? I'm here, Tracy whispered. What exactly are they requesting? Supervised visits initially, 1 hour per week at the Family Services Center. If those go well, they want to work toward building a relationship with their biological daughter. Their biological daughter. The phrase slammed into Tracy's chest like a physical blow. After 9 years of scraped knees and bedtime stories, of homework help and piano recitals, these strangers wanted to waltz back in because they'd finally gotten sober. Do I have any say in this? Tracy asked. As her legal guardian, you can object. But Mrs. Shannon, the courts are increasingly favoring biological family reunification when parents demonstrate genuine rehabilitation. The Harpers have stable housing, steady employment, and clean drug tests going back 8 months. Tracy's hand tightened on the phone. 8 months clean versus 9 years of unconditional love. When? She asked quietly. The hearing is scheduled for next week. You'll need legal representation. After hanging up, Tracy stood frozen in her kitchen, staring at the breakfast dishes she'd washed 1,000 times, the coffee maker that brewed hope every morning, the refrigerator covered with allowance artwork and honor roll certificates. This life they'd built together suddenly felt as fragile as spun glass. Mama Tracy. Elowen appeared in the doorway, backpack slung over her shoulder, concern written across her 12-year-old features. You look scared. What's wrong? How do you tell a child that the people who abandoned her want her back? How do you explain that love and law don't always align? Come sit with me, sweetheart, Tracy said, settling onto their worn couch and patting the cushion beside her. Elowen curled up against Tracy's side, fitting into the space that seemed carved specifically for her small body. Are we in trouble? No, baby, we're not in trouble. Tracy chose her words carefully. Do you remember how we've talked about your birth parents, Maeve and Sterling? Elowen nodded slowly. The ones who couldn't take care of me because they were sick. That's right. Well, they've been working very hard to get better, and now they want to meet you. Green eyes searched Tracy's face with the intensity of someone much older. Do I have to? The judge thinks it might be good for you to know them. Just visits with someone there to make sure everyone's safe. But I don't want to know them, Elowen said with the simple clarity of childhood. I want to stay with you. You're my real mom. The words were a balm and a blade simultaneously. Tracy held her daughter closer, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. I am your real mom, Tracy whispered fiercely. Nothing will ever change that. These visits don't mean anything changes between us. You're my heart, Elowen Sage Kelly Shannon, forever and always. But even as she spoke the words, Tracy felt the first hairline crack in the foundation of their perfect world. The following Saturday, Tracy sat in a sterile family services conference room, watching through one-way glass as her daughter met the strangers who shared her DNA. Maeve Harper was beautiful in that fragile way people get after surviving addiction, all sharp angles and nervous energy, with Elowen's same green eyes and golden hair. Sterling was quieter, steadier, his hands shaking slightly as he reached across the table to touch his biological daughter's arm. You look just like your mama did at your age, Maeve said, tears streaming down her cheeks. Oh, baby girl, I've missed you so much. Elowen sat ramrod straight in her chair, polite but distant. I don't remember you. That's okay, Sterling said gently. You were very little when we got sick. But we're better now. We've been working really hard to get better, and we want to know you. Tracy's nails dug crescents into her palms as she watched these strangers, these people who had left her daughter in a hotel room for 3 days, try to claim pieces of the child she'd raised. I already have a life, Elowen said with 12-year-old directness. With my mom, my real mom. Maeve's face crumpled. Honey, I know Tracy's been wonderful to you, but I'm your real mother. I carried you. I gave birth to you. That has to count for something. The lady who left me alone in a scary room? That lady is my real mother. Elowen's voice carried an edge Tracy had never heard before. The supervising social worker intervened before things could escalate, but Tracy had seen enough. Her daughter was confused, hurt, and being forced to navigate emotional territory no child should have to explore. Over the following weeks, the visits continued. Slowly, incrementally, the Harpers began to chip away at Elowen's resistance. They brought gifts. Expensive toys Tracy couldn't afford, clothes from department stores, promises of trips to Disney World. Look what Maeve and Sterling brought me, Elowen said one evening, showing Tracy a brand new iPhone. They said every 12-year-old should have one. Tracy stared at the device that cost more than their monthly grocery budget. That's very generous of them. They said they want to make up for all the birthdays they missed. Something cold settled in Tracy's stomach. The Harpers weren't just trying to build a relationship, they were buying one. The changes started small. Elowen began straightening her naturally wavy hair, mimicking Maeve's sleek style. She asked for different clothes, brands the popular girls at school wore. She started talking about the Harpers' house, a 3-bedroom colonial with a pool. Maeve showed me pictures of my old nursery, Elowen said one night at dinner. It was pink and white with a princess theme. She said she picked out everything herself before I was born. That sounds beautiful, Tracy managed. She said if things work out, maybe I could see it in person sometime. Maybe even spend weekends there. Tracy's fork clattered against her plate. Weekends? Just sometimes. She said it would be good for me to experience what a traditional family feels like. You know, with a mom and dad together. The words hung in the air like a judgment. Traditional family. As if what they had wasn't traditional enough, wasn't real enough. Meanwhile, Dorian had become a steady presence in their lives. He fixed things around the apartment without being asked, brought groceries when Tracy was working late, helped Elowen with her math homework. But the more the Harpers pulled at Elowen's attention, the more Tracy pushed Dorian away. "You don't have to carry this alone," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch he'd rebuilt. "Let me help you." "I can't," Tracy said, exhaustion making her voice raw. "Everything has to be perfect right now. I can't afford any distractions. The court is watching everything." "And what happens to you in all of this? When do you get to live your life?" Tracy looked through the window at Elowen, who was video chatting with the Harpers on her new phone. "My life is her life. That's how it's always been." "But Tracy, please," she whispered. "I can't lose her. She's everything to me. If that means putting everything else on hold, that's what I'll do." The next morning, Dorian didn't show up to fix the loose railing he'd promised to repair. Tracy found a note on her door. "You and Elowen deserve all the happiness in the world. When you're ready for someone to share the load, you know where to find me. D." Tracy crumpled the note, tears burning her eyes, another sacrifice for Elowen's sake. The college fund had grown to $135,000, boosted by a major insurance settlement from a car accident where a drunk driver had T-boned Tracy's Honda. She'd spent 3 weeks in the hospital with a concussion and broken ribs, but every penny of the settlement went directly into Elowen's future. "Mama, you should use some of that money for yourself," Elowen had said when Tracy explained where the settlement was going. "Maybe take a vacation or buy some new clothes." "Your future is my vacation," Tracy had replied. "Knowing you'll have choices, that's worth more than any trip." But now, watching her daughter's growing fascination with the Harpers' lifestyle, Tracy wondered if she'd sacrificed too much. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening in November. Elowen came home from her weekly visit unusually quiet, her new iPhone clutched in her hands. "How did it go today?" Tracy asked. "Maeve said something," Elowen began, not meeting Tracy's eyes. She said you've done a good job taking care of me, but that it's time for me to be with my real family. She said blood is thicker than water." Tracy's world tilted. "And what did you say?" "I said you are my real family. But then Sterling explained about genetics and how I get my green eyes from Maeve and my height from him, and how I'm going to look just like them when I grow up." Elowen finally looked up, confusion written across her features. "Mama, why don't we look alike?" The question Tracy had been dreading for years. "Because sometimes the best families are chosen, not born," Tracy said carefully. "Love doesn't come from sharing the same eyes or hair color. It comes from showing up every day, even when it's hard." "But they said I belong with people who look like me. They said identity matters, heritage matters." Identity. Heritage. The words the Harpers were using to slowly poison their relationship. "Elowen," Tracy said, kneeling in front of her daughter's chair, "do you remember when you were little and you used to have nightmares? Who chased them away?" "You did. And when you learned to ride a bike and fell down and scraped your knee, who put on the bandages?" "You did. When you had your first piano recital and you were so scared you threw up, who held your hair back and then sat in the front row clapping louder than everyone else?" "You did." Tears started forming in Elowen's eyes. "That's what real family does. Real family shows up. Real family chooses you every single day. But they're my biological parents. Doesn't that mean something?" Tracy's heart cracked, but she answered with honesty. "It means they gave you life, but I gave you love. Every day for 9 years I chose you. I worked 3 jobs for you. I saved every penny for your future. That's what makes someone a real parent. Elowen was quiet for a long moment. I'm confused, Mama. I love you, but they keep saying I need to know where I come from. And what is it they think they can give you that I can't? A traditional family, 2 parents who are married, people who look like me, people who understand what it's like to be white in America. The words hit Tracy like physical blows. After 9 years of pretending race didn't matter, the Harpers were making it central to their argument. "Baby girl," Tracy said softly, "I may not be white, but I've loved you with everything in me. Doesn't that matter more than skin color?" "I don't know," Elowen whispered. "They make it sound like you've been keeping me from something important." That night, after Elowen was asleep, Tracy sat at her kitchen table with the college fund statements spread before her. $135,000 and growing. 9 years of her life's work. But for the first time since she'd adopted Elowen, Tracy wondered if love would be enough to keep her daughter home. The Harpers had money, time, and the one thing Tracy could never give Elowen, biological connection. All Tracy had was love. 9 years of showing up, of choosing Elowen every day. She prayed it would be enough. 7 more years until graduation. 7 more years to prove that chosen love was stronger than inherited connection. The battle for Elowen's heart had officially begun. Chapter 4. The seduction begins. 3 years of supervised visits had transformed strangers into family, and family into something Tracy no longer recognized in her own daughter's eyes as 40-year-old Tracy. Shannon watched 15-year-old Elowen prepare for another weekend with the people who'd given her DNA but never changed a diaper. Elowen stood in front of their hallway mirror, straightening her naturally wavy hair with the expensive flat iron Maeve had bought her, perfecting the sleek look that made her appear older, more sophisticated, more like the woman who had given birth to her and then disappeared for the first 3 years of her life. "You sure you need to straighten it every day?" Tracy asked from the kitchen, trying to keep her voice light while her heart broke a little more each morning. "Your natural curls are so beautiful." "Curls are too childish," Elowen replied without turning around, her voice carrying the casual cruelty that only teenagers could perfect. "Maeve says straight hair looks more professional, more mature," Maeve says. The phrase that had slowly replaced "Mama Tracy says" in far too many of their conversations over the past 3 years. Tracy watched her daughter and tried to pinpoint exactly when everything had started to shift. When had Elowen begun to see their small apartment as inadequate instead of cozy? When had Tracy's second-hand clothes become embarrassing instead of practical? "Don't forget we have your parent-teacher conference tonight," Tracy said, packing Elowen's lunch with the same careful attention she'd given this ritual for 12 years. "Mrs. Peterson wants to talk about your college prep classes." "Actually," Elowen said, finally turning from the mirror with an expression Tracy had learned to dread, "Maeve and Sterling want to come to that. They think it's time they get more involved in my education." The sandwich Tracy was making fell apart in her hands. "More involved? They've been researching private schools. Did you know there's a prep academy across town that sends 97% of its graduates to Ivy League colleges? Maeve thinks I should transfer there for my junior and senior years. Private schools, Ivy League colleges, dreams that cost more than Tracy made in 5 years, delivered with casual assumption that money was no object." "Baby girl," Tracy said carefully, "we've been planning for your education since you were 3 years old. The college fund has over $275,000 in it. That's enough for any state university plus graduate school." Elowen's expression softened slightly, the first genuine emotion Tracy had seen from her in weeks. "I know, Mama, and I'm grateful for everything you've sacrificed. But Sterling showed me the statistics. Private school graduates have better connections, better opportunities, and the Harpers want to pay for it. Make up for lost time." as if 12 years of abandonment could be erased with tuition checks. "What about our plans?" Tracy asked quietly. "What about the dreams we built together?" "I'm not changing my dreams," Elowen said, but something in her voice suggested otherwise. "I still want to be a doctor, but maybe I could aim higher than Virginia Commonwealth. Maybe I could get into Harvard or Duke. It would be amazing. It would also be impossible on a social worker's salary. Even with the college fund Tracy had nearly killed herself to build." That evening, Tracy sat in a too-small plastic chair in Mrs. Peterson's classroom, flanked by Maeve and Sterling Harper, like she was the guest at her own daughter's conference. The couple had arrived in matching Burberry coats, looking every inch the successful suburban parents they'd somehow become. "Elowen is exceptionally bright," Mrs. Peterson was saying, spreading academic records across her desk. "Her grades are stellar. Her test scores put her in the 97th percentile nationally. She has real potential for elite universities." "That's exactly what we hoped to hear," Sterling said, his voice carrying confident authority. "We've been researching the best preparatory programs. Maeve and I want to make sure she has every advantage." Tracy felt like she was watching her daughter's future being decided by committee, with her own voice reduced to a whisper. "The state university system in Virginia is excellent," Tracy managed, "and very affordable. We've been—" "Oh, cost isn't a concern," Maeve interrupted with a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Sterling and I have been saving since we got clean. We want to give Elowen everything we couldn't give her when she was little." Mrs. Peterson looked between the three adults with careful neutrality. "Ultimately, these are decisions for Elowen and her family to make together. I will say that she's mentioned being interested in several prestigious programs lately." After the conference, Tracy found herself walking to her car alone while Elowen rode with the Harpers to their favorite restaurant, a place with cloth napkins and wine lists that Tracy had never been able to afford. At home, the apartment felt hollow without Elowen's presence. Tracy sat at her kitchen table with the college fund statements spread before her like battle plans. $275,000, 12 years of her life's work, 12 years of sacrificing everything for this moment. But the numbers that had once seemed like victory now felt like defeat. What was $275,000 against unlimited resources? What were state universities against Ivy League dreams? The front door opened just after 10 p.m. and Elowen floated in with the dreamy expression of someone who'd been thoroughly spoiled. "How was dinner?" Tracy asked. "Amazing. We went to that new steakhouse downtown. You know, the one in the fancy hotel. Sterling ordered wine for them and sparkling cider for me, and we talked about my future like I was already an adult." "What kind of future?" Elowen settled onto the couch, her expression growing animated in a way Tracy rarely saw anymore. "They showed me brochures for boarding schools. Not just any boarding schools, the kind that presidents' kids attend, the kind with their own stables and Olympic-sized pools and college counselors who have personal relationships with Ivy League admissions officers." Tracy's heart sank. "Boarding school? You want to leave home?" "Not leave," Elowen said quickly, but something in her eyes suggested she'd already mentally packed. "Just expand my opportunities. Maeve went to boarding school and she said it was the best experience of her life. She learned independence, made connections that still benefit her today." Of course she did. A love story built on privilege and opportunity, the kind of romance that happened in boarding schools and country clubs. "What about us?" Tracy asked quietly. "What about our Saturday morning pancakes and our plans for your future?" Elowen's expression grew uncomfortable. "Mama, I'm 15. I'm not going to want Saturday morning pancakes forever, and our plans, well, maybe they need to evolve. Maybe I was thinking too small before." Too small. Their dreams were suddenly too small. "Elowen," Tracy said, fighting to keep her voice steady, "do you remember what you told me when you were 8? You said you wanted to be a doctor so you could fix broken hearts like I fixed yours. I was 8, Elowen replied with dismissive tone teenagers perfected. I didn't understand how the world really works then. And how does the world really work? Connections matter. Money matters. Where you go to school matters. The Harpers understand that. They want to give me advantages you can't. The truth, delivered with teenage bluntness, hung in the air between them like a blade. I've given you everything I have, Tracy said softly. I know, Elowen replied, but her tone suggested gratitude tinged with impatience. But they can give me everything I need. There's a difference. That night, Tracy lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to her daughter video chat with the Harpers through the thin walls. Their voices carried clearly. Maeve's laugh, Sterling's gentle corrections, the easy intimacy of people who shared more than just DNA. The next morning brought a new development. Elowen appeared at breakfast with a sheaf of papers. The Harpers want to take me on a college tour, she announced without preamble. Spring break. We'd visit Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Duke. All the schools I could never see otherwise. Tracy's coffee grew cold in her hands. A college tour. Just for a week. Sterling has connections at most of these schools, alumni networks, professors he knows. He says I should see what's possible before I limit myself to state schools. Limit myself. As if the dreams they'd built together were somehow a cage instead of a foundation. What about our spring break plans? Tracy asked. We always spend that week together, remember? We were going to visit Virginia Tech and UVA. Those schools will still be there, Elowen said with casual dismissal. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The Harpers are paying for everything. Flights, hotels, meals. They want to show me what my future could look like. Tracy stared at her daughter and realized that somewhere along the way, Elowen had begun to see Tracy's dreams as obstacles to overcome rather than goals to achieve. If that's what you want, Tracy said finally. It is. And Mama. Elowen's voice softened slightly. They want you to know this doesn't change anything between us. You're still my mom. You raised me, you loved me, you gave me everything you could. But now I have more options. Isn't that what you always wanted for me? More choices? Choices. Yes, Tracy had wanted Elowen to have choices, but she'd never imagined that one of those choices would be choosing a different family altogether. After Elowen left for school, Tracy called in sick to work, the first time in 12 years, and sat at her kitchen table trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. The college fund statements mocked her from the table, $275,000 that suddenly seemed like pocket change. The Harpers weren't just offering Elowen a better education or more opportunities. They were offering her a different identity, one where she belonged to people who looked like her, who understood her world, who could give her everything she'd ever dreamed of and more. And Tracy. Tracy was just the woman who'd kept her safe until her real family could come claim her. 4 more years until graduation. 4 more years to prove that love chosen was stronger than love inherited. The college fund would keep growing. The sacrifice would continue. But for the first time since she'd brought Elowen home, Tracy wondered if love would be enough to keep her there. Chapter 5. The Growing Divide. The day Tracy realized she'd become a stranger in her daughter's life, she was standing in the parking lot of Richmond Country Club, watching 17-year-old Elowen laugh at something River Cassian Brooks whispered in her ear, while 42-year-old Tracy felt every one of her 16 years of sacrifice crystallizing into painful understanding that love wasn't always enough. River was everything Tracy had expected Elowen to eventually choose: tall, blonde, effortlessly wealthy, with the kind of casual confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. His family owned half the commercial real estate in Richmond, and he wore that privilege like a well-tailored jacket, comfortable and unquestioned. But it wasn't River that made Tracy's chest tight with recognition and loss. It was the way her daughter moved in his world. Shoulders back, chin lifted, speaking in modulated tones that would have made Maeve Harper proud. This wasn't the girl who used to practice piano with fierce concentration, dreaming of medical school while eating pancakes on Saturday mornings. This was someone else entirely, someone who belonged to a world Tracy could observe but never enter. "She looks happy," said Lyra Washington, Tracy's best friend since college, who'd driven out to witness this latest milestone in Eloan's transformation. Different, but happy. Different was an understatement. 17-year-old Eloan had grown into her beauty with effortless grace that stopped traffic and started conversations. Her hair fell in perfect waves, no longer the stick-straight style Maeve had preferred, but something more natural that somehow managed to look expensive. She wore a sundress that probably cost more than Tracy's monthly rent, and she moved through the country club crowd like she'd been born to it, which technically she had been. The Harpers might have been addicts when Eloan was born, but they came from money, old Virginia money that had weathered addiction and scandal and emerged intact, ready to reclaim what was theirs. "She doesn't even see me," Tracy murmured, watching as Eloan posed for photos with River's family, fitting seamlessly into their sun-drenched, privilege-soaked world. This was Eloan's senior year, and every moment felt like another step away from the life they'd built together. The college fund had reached $425,000, Tracy's entire existence sacrificed and distilled into numbers on a statement, but it no longer seemed to matter. The Harpers had bigger plans, deeper pockets, and most importantly, they had Eloan's attention. "Tracy Shannon?" A voice interrupted her brooding. Tracy turned to find a woman about her own age, immaculately dressed, with the kind of smile that never quite reached the eyes. "I'm Patricia Brooks, River's mother. I've heard so much about you from Eloan." So much. Tracy wondered what exactly her daughter had shared about their small apartment, Tracy's 3 jobs, their Saturday morning pancakes that had somehow become embarrassing relics of childhood. "It's nice to meet you," Tracy managed. "River just adores Eloan. They make such a beautiful couple, don't you think?" Patricia's gaze swept over Tracy's department store dress with the kind of assessment wealthy women perfected. "And she's so accomplished. Valedictorian, early admission to Duke, full scholarship to the pre-med program. You must be very proud." Duke, full scholarship. This was the first Tracy was hearing of either development. Yes, very proud," Tracy said, feeling like an actress who'd forgotten her lines. "Of course, we're delighted she'll be close by. North Carolina isn't far at all, and the Harpers have that lovely house in Charlotte, so she'll have family nearby during her college years." The Harpers had a house in Charlotte. Eloan was going to Duke. These were fundamental facts about her daughter's future that Tracy was learning from a stranger at a country club where she didn't belong. After the party, Tracy drove home in silence, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. When she pulled into the parking lot of their apartment complex, with its cracked asphalt and flickering security lights, the contrast to the manicured country club felt like a physical blow. Eloan came home after midnight, floating through the door, with the dreamy expression of someone who'd been thoroughly validated by a world that appreciated her worth. "How was the party?" Tracy asked from the couch, where she'd been pretending to read while actually listening for the sound of her daughter's key in the lock. "Amazing," Eloan said, settling into the chair across from her with uncharacteristic willingness to engage. "River's family is so welcoming. They treat me like I already belong." "And do you?" "Belong, I mean." Eloan considered the question with the seriousness she'd inherited from Tracy. "I think I do. For the first time in my life, I'm around people who look like me, who come from similar backgrounds. It feels natural." Similar backgrounds. As if the first 14 years of Eloan's life had been some kind of cultural misunderstanding, a temporary detour from her true destiny. "Speaking of backgrounds," Tracy said carefully, "Mrs. Brooks mentioned Duke University. Full scholarship?" A flush crept across Eloan's cheeks. "I was going to tell you. I wanted to make sure everything was official first. Duke is expensive. Even with a scholarship, there are expenses." "Sterling and Maeve are handling all of that," Eloan interrupted. "They want to make sure money isn't a factor in my education. They said the college fund you saved can be for medical school or for my residency or whatever I need later." The college fund Tracy had built penny by penny, sacrifice by sacrifice, was now relegated to whatever she needs later, a backup plan to the primary generosity of the Harpers. "When did you apply to Duke?" Tracy asked. "I thought we agreed you'd focus on in-state schools." "We talked about in-state schools when I was younger and didn't understand my options," Eloan said with gentle condescension teenagers perfected. "But Sterling has connections there. He went to Duke for his MBA, and Maeve's father was a major donor. They thought I should aim higher." Aim higher. As if everything Tracy had dreamed for her daughter was somehow beneath her potential. "What about our other plans? Virginia Commonwealth has an excellent medical program, UVA—" "Mama," Eloan interrupted, her voice taking on the patient tone she'd use with a child. "Those are good schools, but Duke is elite. The connections I'll make there, the opportunities that will open up, it's a completely different level." That night, after Eloan had gone to bed, Tracy sat at her kitchen table with the college fund statement spread before her, like evidence of a crime she couldn't quite name. $425,000. 14 years of her life distilled into numbers that suddenly seemed insignificant against the unlimited resources the Harpers commanded. Her phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, her heart lifted, thinking it might be Eloan sharing some detail about her evening. Instead, it was from Dorian, the first communication she'd had from him in 2 years. "Saw the Duke announcement in the paper. Congratulations. You should be proud of what you built." Tracy stared at the message until the words blurred. What she'd built. Past tense. As if the raising of Eloan Kelly Shannon was already complete, already relegated to history. She typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "Thank you." But she wasn't proud. She was terrified. Terrified that she'd spent 14 years building dreams that someone else would get to claim. Terrified that love and sacrifice weren't enough when competing against money and biology. The next few months passed in a blur of senior year milestones that felt more like a countdown to goodbye than celebrations of achievement. Eloan's graduation approached like a storm system Tracy could see building on the horizon but felt powerless to deflect. The Harpers had taken over most of the planning, the party, the photographer, the dinner reservations at Richmond's most exclusive restaurant. Tracy found herself relegated to the role of observer in her own daughter's milestone moments, watching from the sidelines as other people orchestrated the celebration of a child they'd had no hand in raising. But it was the conversation she overheard 3 weeks before graduation that finally broke something essential inside Tracy's carefully guarded heart. She'd come home early from work, a rare afternoon off, to find Eloan on the phone in her bedroom, door cracked open just enough for her voice to carry. "I know it sounds terrible," Eloan was saying, her tone carrying guilty confidence, "but I'm ready to start my real life, you know. Tracy's been amazing, don't get me wrong. She saved me, she raised me, she gave me everything she could, but she can't give me what you and Sterling can." Tracy froze in the hallway, her keys still in her hand. "It's not about money," Eloan continued, though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "It's about belonging somewhere, about being with people who understand what it's like to be me. Tracy tries, she really does, but we're just different. We always have been." different. The word Tracy had spent 14 years trying to prove didn't matter. I feel guilty sometimes. Elowen's voice grew softer, more vulnerable. She worked so hard for me. 3 jobs, never taking vacations, never buying herself anything nice. But I can't live my life trying to pay back a debt I never asked for, you know? A debt she never asked for. 14 years of love reduced to an unwanted obligation. Once I'm at Duke, I can start fresh. I can be who I'm supposed to be, not who circumstances forced me to become. Does that make sense? Tracy backed away from the door quietly, her heart hammering against her ribs. She made it to the kitchen before the tears started. Great, gasping sobs that came from a place deeper than heartbreak. 16 years. 16 years of choosing Elowen over everything else. Over her own dreams, her own comfort, her own chances at love. 16 years of believing that devotion and sacrifice would be enough to build an unbreakable bond. When Elowen emerged from her room an hour later, Tracy had composed herself enough to appear normal. She made dinner, asked about homework, maintained the careful choreography of their relationship that had become more performance than genuine connection. "Mama," Elowen said as they cleared the dishes, "I've been thinking about after graduation. The Harpers want me to spend the summer with them before college starts. Sterling's got an internship lined up at his company, and Maeve wants to take me on a mother-daughter trip to Europe." Mother-daughter trip. The phrase hit Tracy like a slap. "What about our plans?" Tracy asked quietly. "We talked about spending the summer together before you leave for college. One last summer." Elowen's expression grew uncomfortable. "I know, and I want that too. But this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'd get to see London, Paris, Rome, places I've only read about. And the internship would look amazing on my medical school applications." "Of course," Tracy managed. "That sounds wonderful. You understand, right? You know I'd rather spend time with you, but this is about my future." Her future. The future Tracy had spent 16 years building, now being handed to her by people who'd contributed DNA and abandonment. 2 more years until graduation. 2 more years until the moment when Tracy would have to smile and clap and celebrate her daughter's achievements while watching her walk into a life where Tracy would be, at best, a footnote. Outside her window, Richmond slept under stars that had witnessed 16 years of love, sacrifice, and the slow, inevitable heartbreak of raising someone to leave you. Inside, Tracy closed her eyes and tried to remember what her own dreams had looked like before they'd been replaced by someone else's future. But all she could see was a 3-year-old girl with tangled curls and a one-eared rabbit, looking up with desperate hope and whispering, "You came back." She had come back. Every day for 16 years she'd come back. And in 2 years, she'd have to learn how to let go. Chapter 6. The Perfect Daughter's Dilemma. Senior year had turned Tracy's daughter into a stranger who shared her last name but little else, and graduation morning arrived dressed in the kind of perfect spring weather that mocked the storm building in 44-year-old Tracy's chest. Her heart heavy with the knowledge that 16 years of sacrifice were about to be tested by a single speech. Standing in front of their bathroom mirror at 6 a.m., Tracy caught sight of herself and barely recognized the woman staring back. At 44, she looked a decade older, silver threading through her black hair, lines carved deep around her eyes from years of working multiple jobs, shoulders permanently curved from carrying burdens that had never been meant for one person to bear alone. In the next room, 18-year-old Elowen moved through her morning routine with practiced efficiency. Valedictorian, early admission to Duke University with a full academic scholarship, pre-med track, awards in chemistry, biology, and mathematics. A resume that read like Tracy's wildest dreams made manifest. But dreams, Tracy had learned, could become nightmares when the dreamer no longer wanted to share them with you. "Mama, have you seen my cap tassel?" Elowen called from her bedroom, voice carrying the slight edge of someone trying to manage 17 different details while maintaining composure. "Kitchen counter, next to your speech notes," Tracy replied, her own voice steadier than she felt. The speech. Tracy had helped edit early drafts 3 weeks ago, back when they still shared such intimate moments. But the final version, the one Elowen would deliver to 800 graduating seniors and their families, that was something Tracy would hear for the first time along with everyone else. "Thank you," Elowen said, appearing in the kitchen doorway wearing her graduation gown over the white dress they'd chosen together last month, one of the few traditions they'd managed to preserve. "You don't have to worry about breakfast. Sterling's taking Maeve and me to that new place on Monument Avenue before the ceremony." Sterling's taking Maeve and me. Like they were the natural pairing, the obvious family unit, and Tracy was the outsider looking in on their biological bond. "That sounds nice," Tracy managed. "What time should I meet you at the school?" "Actually," Elowen paused, her expression taking on that careful neutrality Tracy had learned to dread. River's family reserved a section for all the families to sit together. The Harpers will be there, River's parents, his grandparents. They asked if you'd like to join us. They asked. As if Tracy needed permission to watch her own daughter graduate, as if her presence required approval from people who'd known Elowen for 5 years versus the woman who'd raised her for 16. "I'll sit wherever you need me to," Tracy said quietly. Relief flickered across Elowen's face, not the relief of someone glad to include their mother, but the relief of someone who'd successfully navigated a potentially awkward conversation without causing offense. After Elowen left for breakfast with her real family, Tracy sat alone in their kitchen, drinking coffee that had gone cold while she wasn't paying attention. The college fund statement lay folded on the table beside her. $600,000 accumulated through 16 years of sacrifice, compound interest, and the kind of determination that came from believing love could conquer any obstacle. But love, Tracy was learning, couldn't compete with biology, money, or the seductive promise of belonging somewhere without having to explain your presence. 2 hours later, Tracy found herself in the Richmond Coliseum, surrounded by hundreds of families celebrating their children's achievements. The Brooks family section was easy to spot. Prime seating, professional photographer, enough flowers to stock a small shop. Maeve Harper looked radiant in a designer suit that probably cost more than Tracy made in a month, while Sterling stood behind her with the satisfied expression of someone who'd won a prize he'd never actually competed for. River's mother, Patricia Brooks, waved Tracy over with the kind of generous smile wealthy women used when they wanted to demonstrate their inclusivity. "Tracy, darling, we saved you a seat right here in the family section. Isn't this exciting?" Family section. As if 16 years of single motherhood had earned Tracy honorary membership in their exclusive club. Tracy took her designated seat, 3rd row, slightly off-center, with a clear view of the stage, but positioned behind the biological and economic families who'd claimed primary rights to Elowen's achievements. When the graduates filed in to pomp and circumstance, Tracy's breath caught in her throat. Elowen looked luminous, golden hair catching the arena lights, smile radiant with the confidence of someone who'd mastered every challenge set before her. This was the 3-year-old who'd clutched a 1-eared rabbit and asked if Tracy would still love her if she cried. The ceremony proceeded with expected pageantry, school songs, administrative speeches, the presentation of awards that Elowen won in multiples, academic excellence, leadership, community service, a litany of achievements that represented not just Elowen's hard work, but Tracy's sacrifice, Tracy's guidance, Tracy's belief that her daughter could accomplish anything. But when the microphone was handed to the valedictorian for her address to the graduating class, Tracy felt her heart rate accelerate with something that might have been anticipation or might have been dread. Elowen approached the podium with the poise of someone born to command attention. The arena quieted, 800 families focusing on this 18-year-old girl who represented the best of what public education could accomplish. Fellow graduates, families, faculty, and friends, Elowen began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. Today marks not just the end of our high school journey, but the beginning of who we're meant to become. Tracy leaned forward, every word landing in her chest like stones dropped in still water. As I look out at all of you, I'm reminded that we are the sum of everyone who believed in us, who sacrificed for us, who loved us enough to demand our best even when we didn't think we had it to give. The camera focused on Elowen's face, broadcasting her image to screens throughout the arena. Tracy saw her own features reflected in her daughter's bone structure, the determined set of her jaw, the way she held her shoulders when she was nervous. I want to thank the people who made this moment possible, Elowen continued, and Tracy's heart began to pound so hard she could hear it over the arena's sound system. First and foremost, I want to thank my real mom, Tracy Eilani Shannon. The words hit Tracy like lightning. Real mom. After 5 years of watching Elowen gravitate toward the Harpers, after months of feeling like a placeholder in her own daughter's life, real mom. Mama Tracy. Elowen's voice grew stronger, more emotional. You took a broken 3-year-old and loved her into becoming the woman standing before you today. You worked 3 jobs so I could take piano lessons. You lived on nothing so I could have everything. You sacrificed your own dreams so mine could come true. Tracy was crying now, ugly, gasping sobs that she tried to muffle behind her hands. Around her, the Brooks family section had grown uncomfortably quiet, perhaps recognizing that they were witnessing something more intimate than a typical graduation speech. Every achievement I've earned, every opportunity I've been given, every door that's opened for me, it all exists because you chose to love me completely, unconditionally, and forever. Elowen continued, her own voice beginning to crack with emotion. You taught me that family isn't about who shares your DNA. It's about who shows up every single day, through every struggle, every triumph, every moment when you wanted to give up but didn't because someone else needed you to keep going. The applause that followed was thunderous, but Tracy barely heard it. Her daughter, her beautiful, brilliant, complicated daughter, had just claimed her publicly, had just acknowledged 16 years of devotion in front of 800 people. But something in Elowen's expression as she paused, something in the way she gripped the podium, told Tracy that the speech wasn't over, that the moment she'd been dreading was still coming. At the same time, Elowen's voice grew steadier, more controlled. I want to acknowledge my biological parents, Maeve and Sterling Harper, who gave me life and who have worked so hard to become part of my story again. Recovery is a courageous journey, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to know the people who created me. There it was, the diplomatic balancing act that honored Tracy's sacrifice while making room for the Harpers' biological claim. But most importantly, Elowen's voice strengthened and Tracy held her breath. I want to announce that I'll be spending this summer with my biological family in California, exploring that side of my heritage and getting to know the relatives I never knew I had. After freshman year at Duke, I plan to transfer to their California campus to be closer to my biological family and to start building the life I was meant to have. The final words landed like bombs in Tracy's chest. The life I was meant to have. As if 16 years with Tracy had been some kind of detour from Elowen's true destiny. The arena erupted in applause, but Tracy sat frozen in her chair, the world spinning around her. Her daughter had called her real mom, but had also just announced she was leaving for a different life, one where Tracy would be a grateful memory instead of a daily presence. As the graduates filed out for pictures with family, Tracy found herself swept up in the chaos of 800 people trying to locate their children. By the time she spotted Eloan, her daughter was already surrounded by the Brooks and Harper families, posing for professional photographs that would commemorate this moment forever. Tracy hung back, uncertain of her place in this choreographed celebration. She'd been acknowledged as the real mom, but she felt like a supporting actor in someone else's graduation story. "Mama!" Eloan's voice cut through the crowd, and suddenly she was there, launching herself into Tracy's arms with the kind of unguarded enthusiasm Tracy hadn't experienced in months. "You did it, baby girl," Tracy whispered into her daughter's hair, holding her close and breathing in the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done any of it without you," Eloan said, pulling back to look Tracy in the eyes. "You know that, right? Everything I am, everything I've accomplished, it's all because of you." But even as they held each other, Tracy was aware of the Harpers and Brooks families waiting nearby, patient but expectant. There would be a celebratory dinner at Richmond's most expensive restaurant. There would be toasts and gift-giving and planning for Eloan's summer with the Harpers before she left for Duke. And Tracy would be invited, not as the primary architect of Eloan's success, but as an honored guest in a celebration orchestrated by people with deeper pockets and biological authenticity. "I love you, Mama Tracy," Eloan said, the words carrying the weight of 16 years of shared history. "That will never change, no matter what happens next. No matter what happens next." The phrase that confirmed Tracy's deepest fear, that graduation wasn't just the end of high school, but the end of the life they'd built together. "I love you too, baby girl," Tracy replied, releasing her daughter into the arms of people who'd played no part in raising her, but who would play a starring role in her future. That night, alone in their apartment, Tracy sat surrounded by 16 years of memories, photo albums, report cards, artwork, piano recital programs. The college fund statement lay on the table. $600,000. 16 years of her life converted into numbers that would fund someone else's dreams of claiming her daughter. She'd been called real mom in front of 800 people, but real moms, Tracy was learning, could be honored and replaced simultaneously. They could be thanked for their service and then gently moved aside to make room for people with better resources and biological authenticity. The graduation speech had been perfect, diplomatic, grateful, and devastating, just like the daughter who'd delivered it. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. The silence in Tracy's Honda Civic during the drive home from graduation was deafening, filled with the weight of 16 years of love colliding with 18 years of biological entitlement, and Tracy knew that everything she'd built was about to crumble in ways she'd never imagined possible. Eloan sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her cap and gown, clutching the diploma that represented both Tracy's greatest triumph and her impending loss. The silver heart necklace Tracy had given her that morning caught the afternoon light, a symbol of their unbreakable bond that was already showing hairline cracks. "Mama," Eloan said finally, her voice small in the way it used to be when she was 3 years old and afraid of thunderstorms. "Are you angry with me?" Tracy's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Angry didn't begin to cover what she was feeling. Betrayed, devastated, hollowed out. But looking at her daughter's face in the rearview mirror, she saw not the confident valedictorian who'd just announced her intention to build a new life in California, but the terrified child who'd once asked if Tracy would still love her if she cried. "I'm not angry, baby girl," Tracy said quietly. "I'm heartbroken. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. I was going to tell you about California privately, but when I was up there, looking out at everyone, I wanted to be honest about my plans. Honest. The word that felt like salt in an open wound. Elowen had been honest about her plans to leave, honest about choosing the Harper's world over the life they'd built together, honest about viewing Tracy's 16 years of sacrifice as a temporary arrangement until her real family could reclaim her. "You called me your real mum," Tracy said, pulling into the parking lot of their apartment complex. "And then, in the same speech, you announced you're moving across the country to be with your biological family." "You are my real mum," Elowen insisted, tears starting to form in her green eyes. "Nothing will ever change that. But Mama, they're offering me things you can't. Connections, opportunities, a chance to understand where I come from. It doesn't mean I love you less." Tracy turned off the engine and sat in the silence for a moment, staring at their apartment building, the place where she'd raised her daughter, where they'd shared thousands of meals and built countless dreams, where she'd worked herself to exhaustion to create opportunities for a child who was now ready to walk away from all of it. "When do you leave?" Tracy asked. "Next week. Sterling's arranged for me to fly out to California for the summer. There's an internship at his new company, and Maeve wants to show me around the family properties, introduce me to relatives I've never met." Next week. Not even time to process the betrayal, to say goodbye properly, to figure out how to exist in a world where Elowen wasn't the center of everything. "And Duke? I'll do freshman year there like planned, but I'm already working on the transfer application for their California campus. The Harpers think it would be better for me to be closer to family during college." Closer to family. The phrase that relegated Tracy to something less than family, something temporary and disposable. They climbed the stairs to their apartment in silence, Elowen's graduation gown rustling with each step like the sound of dreams being packed away. Inside, the space felt different, not like home, but like a place Elowen was already preparing to leave. "I need to start packing," Elowen said, hovering in the doorway between the living room and her bedroom. "Sterling said I should bring summer clothes and anything that's important to me." Anything that's important to me. Tracy wondered if that category included the woman who'd raised her, or if Tracy would be left behind with the childhood furniture and outgrown clothes. While Elowen packed, Tracy sat at her kitchen table with the college fund statement spread before her. $600,000. 16 years of her life converted into numbers that were about to fund someone else's vision of Elowen's future. She thought about all the nights she'd worked cleaning offices while Elowen slept, all the meals she'd skipped so her daughter could have better nutrition, all the vacations she'd never taken and dreams she'd deferred. Every sacrifice had been made with the assumption that she was investing in their shared future, not subsidizing someone else's family reunion. Her phone rang, interrupting her spiral of self-pity. The caller ID showed Lyra Washington's name. "How are you holding up?" her best friend asked without preamble. "I don't know," Tracy said honestly. "She called me her real mom in front of 800 people, and then announced she's moving to California to be with her biological family. How am I supposed to process that?" "Maybe she's just confused. 18 is young to make decisions about where you belong." "She's not confused, Lyra. She's made her choice. The Harpers can give her things I never could, money, connections, a lifestyle I'll never be able to match. And most importantly, they can give her an identity that doesn't require explaining why she doesn't look like her mother." "But they didn't raise her. They didn't sit up with her when she had nightmares, or teach her to ride a bike, or work 3 jobs to pay for her piano lessons." "Apparently, that doesn't matter as much as I thought it did." After hanging up, Tracy walked through the apartment, taking inventory of 16 years of shared life. Elowen's baby photos on the refrigerator, her piano recital programs on the coffee table, the growth chart penciled on the kitchen door frame, the purple bedroom where a 3-year-old had learned to feel safe for the first time. All of it was about to become a museum of a relationship that was being reclassified as temporary guardianship. From Elowen's room came the sounds of packing, dresser drawers opening and closing, hangers scraping against the closet rod, the soft thud of items being placed in suitcases. Tracy recognized the efficiency her daughter brought to everything she did, the same methodical approach she'd used to earn valedictorian honors. "Mama!" Elowen's voice called from her bedroom. "Could you help me decide what to take?" Tracy found her daughter standing in the middle of her room, surrounded by the artifacts of their life together. Clothes were sorted into piles on her bed, and 2 large suitcases lay open like hungry mouths waiting to be fed. "What do you need help with?" Elowen held up the Barbie dream house Tracy had saved for 3 months to buy for her 8th birthday, the one Elowen had claimed to still have in her closet because it held too many memories to throw away. "Should I take this? It seems silly, but what? But it reminds me of how hard you worked to make me happy. Even when we didn't have much, you always found a way to give me what I wanted." Tracy's throat constricted. "If it's important to you, take it. What about this?" Elowen held up the stuffed rabbit that had traveled with her from the foster home, one-eared, threadbare, the first family she'd ever known. "That goes with you wherever you go," Tracy said firmly. "Rabbit has been with you longer than I have." They packed in companionable silence for a while, sorting through the accumulated treasures of childhood. Each item seemed to carry the weight of memory. The dress Tracy had sewn for Elowen's first piano recital, the science fair trophies, the stack of birthday cards Tracy had made by hand when money was too tight for store-bought. "Mama," Elowen said suddenly, holding up a photo of the 2 of them from her 13th birthday. "I want you to know that none of this is about not appreciating everything you've done for me. You saved my life in every way that matters. Then why does it feel like you're throwing it away?" Elowen sank onto her bed, surrounded by the detritus of her childhood. "Because I am 18 years old, and I have spent my entire conscious life being grateful for being rescued. I have never once gotten to make a choice about where I belong or who I want to be. So this is about choice. This is about finally having options. For the first time in my life, I can choose to explore my biological heritage, to understand where I come from, to see what kind of person I might have been if circumstances had been different." "And what kind of person is that?" "I don't know. That's what I need to find out." Tracy looked around the room, the purple walls she'd painted with such hope, the bookshelf filled with stories they'd read together, the desk where Elowen had done homework while Tracy worked her second job. "When you find out who you're supposed to be," Tracy said quietly, "I hope she's someone who remembers the woman who loved her unconditionally for 16 years. "She will," Elowen whispered. "She will." The next week passed in a blur of final preparations. The Harpers called daily to coordinate travel arrangements, discuss summer plans, and offer reassurances that Tracy would always be welcome to visit. Their generosity felt like condescension, the kind of magnanimous gestures wealthy people made when they'd won and could afford to be gracious. On the morning of Elowen's departure, Tracy drove her to the airport in the same Honda Civic that had brought her home from the foster home 16 years earlier. The symbolism wasn't lost on either of them. "I'll call you every day," Elowen promised as they stood in the departure area, watching travelers rush toward gates and destinations and new lives. "You don't have to," Tracy said. "You'll be busy discovering who you're meant to be." "Mama, please don't be like this. This isn't goodbye forever. I'll be back for holidays, for visits. Nothing has to change between us." But everything had already changed. The moment Elowen announced her plans in her graduation speech, the balance of their relationship had shifted irrevocably. Tracy was no longer the primary parent, the decision-maker, the person Elowen turned to first. She was now one of several adults in Eloan's life, competing for attention with people who had biological claims and unlimited resources. "I love you, baby girl," Tracy said, hugging her daughter one last time. "Be happy. Be everything you want to be." "I love you too, Mama Tracy. More than you'll ever know." As Tracy watched Eloan walk toward the security checkpoint, rolling suitcases packed with 16 years of memories and dreams, she realized that she'd spent so long preparing her daughter to leave that she'd never prepared herself to be left behind. The college fund sat untouched in the bank, $600,000 that Eloan no longer needed, that the Harpers had made irrelevant with their own resources. 16 years of Tracy's life distilled into numbers that represented dreams that would never be fulfilled the way she'd imagined. That night, alone in an apartment that echoed with absence, Tracy sat in Eloan's empty purple bedroom and tried to remember who she'd been before she became a mother. But the woman who'd existed before Eloan felt like a stranger, someone from another lifetime who'd had different priorities and smaller dreams. For 16 years, Tracy's identity had been defined by a single role: Eloan's mother. Now she was going to have to figure out who Tracy Shannon was when she wasn't needed, when she wasn't chosen, when she wasn't the center of someone else's universe. The graduation diploma hung on Eloan's wall, next to photos of their life together. But the girl who'd earned that diploma was already 3,000 miles away, beginning the process of becoming someone new, someone who might not need the woman who'd raised her. Chapter 8. The Breaking Point. 2 months after graduation, Tracy's heart stopped beating properly for the first time in 44 years, and she realized that broken hearts weren't just metaphors. They were medical emergencies waiting to happen to women who'd given everything away and had nothing left to sustain themselves. The attack came on a Tuesday morning while she was cleaning out Eloan's bedroom, finally accepting that her daughter wasn't coming home at the end of summer. Tracy had been holding a photo from Eloan's 8th birthday, the Barbie Dreamhouse year, when she'd worked double shifts for 3 months to afford 30 minutes of pure joy on a little girl's face, when the chest pain started. At first, she mistook it for the heartbreak that had become her constant companion since graduation day. But this was different, sharp, radiating, accompanied by shortness of breath that had nothing to do with crying and everything to do with a cardiovascular system that had finally said enough. 16 years of stress, overwork, and emotional extremes had taken their toll. 3 jobs for 13 years, chronic sleep deprivation, meals skipped so Eloan could have better nutrition, medical checkups postponed because the money always had to go toward the college fund, a body that had been treated as a machine designed to produce opportunities for someone else rather than a vessel deserving of care. The paramedics found her on Eloan's bedroom floor, surrounded by boxes of memories she'd been cataloging for a daughter who was 3 states away, learning what it felt like to live with people who shared her DNA. "Ma'am, can you tell us your name?" The EMT's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Tracy Shannon," she managed. "My daughter. I need to call my daughter." "Let's focus on you right now, Ms. Shannon. We're going to take good care of you." But Tracy had spent 16 years believing that taking care of herself was secondary to taking care of everyone else. Even as they loaded her into the ambulance, her primary concern was that Eloan would blame herself, would feel obligated to interrupt her summer of discovery to tend to the woman who'd raised her. The emergency room at VCU Medical Center was a symphony of controlled chaos that Tracy, as a social worker, knew well from the other side. She'd brought countless children here over the years, kids with suspicious bruises, teenagers in crisis, families in meltdown. Now she was the emergency, the crisis, the person other people would write reports about. "Miss Shannon, you've suffered what we call stress cardiomyopathy," Dr. Lisa Chen explained hours later, when Tracy's vitals had stabilized enough for conversation. It's sometimes called broken heart syndrome, though that's not a medical term we typically use. Broken heart syndrome. The irony was so perfect that Tracy almost laughed. The good news is that it's usually reversible with proper care and stress management. The concerning news is that your body has been operating under severe stress for what appears to be years. Your blood pressure is dangerously elevated, you're showing signs of chronic exhaustion, and your nutrition levels suggest you haven't been taking proper care of yourself. "I've been taking care of my daughter," Tracy said quietly. "I understand that. But Miss Shannon, you can't take care of anyone else if you don't take care of yourself first. Your body is telling you that it can't sustain the level of stress you've been carrying." Dr. Chen's words echoed what Lyra, Dorian, and half a dozen other people had been trying to tell Tracy for years. That martyrdom wasn't the same thing as motherhood, that sacrifice without self-care was just slow-motion suicide. "Do I need to call anyone for you?" Dr. Chen asked gently. "Family? Close friends?" Tracy stared at the hospital ceiling and tried to figure out how to answer that question. Her daughter was in California, 3 weeks into her summer of authentic living with her biological parents. Her mother, Indira, lived in assisted living and didn't need the stress of Tracy's medical emergency. Her sister Daphne was managing her own family crisis with teenage twins. "There's someone," she said finally, thinking of Dorian's kind eyes and patient heart. He arrived within an hour, still wearing his work clothes and carrying flowers from the hospital gift shop. Daisies, simple and cheerful, and exactly what someone would choose if they wanted to bring hope without romantic implications. "Hey there," he said softly, settling into the uncomfortable chair beside her hospital bed. "How are we feeling?" "Like 16 years of bad decisions just caught up with me," Tracy replied honestly. "I don't think loving that girl counts as a bad decision." "Doesn't it?" The question came out more bitter than Tracy intended. "I spent 16 years building something I thought was permanent, and she walked away from it in a single speech. I worked myself literally into the hospital for someone who decided I was temporary." Dorian was quiet for a long moment, studying her face with the careful attention she remembered from their brief courtship years earlier, back when she'd believed there might be room in her life for something beyond Eloan's needs. "You know what I think," he said finally. "I think you raised a girl to be independent, confident, and capable of making her own choices. And now you're angry that she's doing exactly what you trained her to do." "I trained her to abandon the people who loved her. You trained her to pursue her dreams and never settle for less than she deserves. The fact that her dreams don't include you the way you hoped doesn't make them wrong. It makes them hers." The words stung because they carried the uncomfortable weight of truth. Tracy had always told Eloan to aim high, to never limit herself, to choose the best possible future regardless of what other people wanted for her. "So I'm supposed to be happy that she chose people who abandoned her over the person who saved her. You're supposed to be proud that she's strong enough to make complicated choices about her own life, even when those choices hurt people she loves." Tracy turned toward the window, where California seemed impossibly far away. The state where her daughter was learning what it felt like to belong to a traditional family with traditional resources and traditional connections. "She called me," Tracy said quietly, "yesterday, for exactly 23 minutes. The call had been everything Tracy had feared and more. Eloan had seemed genuinely happy, bubbling with enthusiasm about her internship at Sterling's company, her weekends at the family beach house, her upcoming Europe trip with Maeve. "How are you feeling, Mama?" she'd asked, and Tracy had heard genuine concern in her voice. The kind of worry you'd have for an elderly relative you cared about but didn't depend on. "I'm fine, baby girl," Tracy had lied. "Tell me about your summer. And Elowen had talked for 20 minutes about her new life, the cousins she'd never known existed, the family traditions she was learning, the sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. "It's amazing, Mama," she'd said. "For the first time in my life, I'm around people who just understand me. I don't have to explain anything. I just fit. I just fit." The phrase that confirmed everything Tracy had feared about their relationship, that 16 years of love hadn't been enough to make Elowen feel like she truly belonged. "I should go," Elowen had said eventually. "Sterling's making his famous barbecue tonight and the whole extended family is coming over." The whole extended family that had suddenly materialized to welcome the prodigal daughter home. "I love you, Mama," Elowen had added, almost as an afterthought. "I love you too, baby girl." But love, Tracy was learning, wasn't the same thing as need, wasn't the same thing as choice, wasn't the same thing as belonging. "She's found her people," Tracy told Dorian now, tears starting despite her best efforts. "And I'm not one of them." "Maybe not," Dorian said gently, "but that doesn't erase 16 years of love. That doesn't make you less important to who she became." "It feels like it does. It feels like I was just keeping her warm until her real family could claim her. Or maybe you were the person who kept her safe and loved and whole until she was strong enough to explore all of her possibilities, including the ones that don't include you." That evening, after Dorian had gone home and the hospital had settled into its nighttime rhythm, Tracy made the phone call that would change everything. She called her lawyer first, then her accountant, then her sister Daphne to witness the conversation that would transfer $600,000 from Elowen's college fund to 8-year-old Aria Shannon, Daphne's daughter, Tracy's niece, the little girl who still called her Mama T and sent handmade birthday cards. "Are you sure about this?" Daphne asked, her voice careful over the phone. "I'm sure," Tracy replied. "Elowen has found her family. They can fund her future. This money was supposed to be a mother's love converted into opportunity. Since she doesn't see me as her mother anymore, it should go to someone who does." "Tracy, honey, you're making this decision while you're hurt and angry. Maybe you should wait. I've been waiting for 16 years for someone to choose me first. I'm done waiting." The paperwork was completed by Thursday. By Friday, the college fund that had represented Tracy's entire adult life belonged to someone else. Elowen called that weekend, her voice tight with something that might have been panic or might have been guilt. "Mama, I tried to access the college fund for my Duke expenses, and the bank said it's been transferred. Did something happen?" "I transferred it," Tracy said simply. "Transferred it where?" "To Aria. She's 8 years old, loves me unconditionally, and calls me Mama T without having to qualify it by explaining that I'm not her real mother." The silence that followed was so complete, Tracy wondered if the call had been dropped. "You gave away my college fund?" Elowen's voice was small, shocked. "I gave away the money I saved for the daughter I raised. Since you've made it clear that you prefer the parents who abandoned you to the person who chose you every single day for 16 years, they can fund your future." "Mama, that's not fair. You know I love you. You know I'm grateful." "Gratitude isn't love, Elowen, and I'm tired of being someone you're grateful to instead of someone you choose. The Harpers wanted to be your real parents? Let them pay the real parent price. But Duke is expensive. Without that money, you'll have to live like I've always lived, making the best choices available with the resources you actually have, instead of depending on someone else's sacrifice." "That's not what I wanted. I never asked you to sacrifice everything for me." "No," Tracy said quietly, "but I did it anyway, because that's what mothers do for the children they choose to love. And now you've chosen other people to be your real family, so they can make the real family sacrifices." After hanging up, Tracy sat in her hospital bed and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst mistake of her broken heart. But for the first time in 16 years, She'd chosen herself first, and that felt like the beginning of learning how to heal. The money was gone. The daughter she'd raised had chosen another family. The future she'd planned was shattered. But Tracy Shannon was still alive, still breathing, still capable of building something new from the ashes of her old dreams, even if she had no idea what that something might be. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. The rage that brought Elowen Kelly Shannon back to Richmond arrived in a rented BMW at 11:47 p.m. on a Thursday in November, 6 months after she'd walked away from 16 years of love to discover her authentic self with people who shared her DNA and her sense of entitlement. Tracy heard the car door slam from her bedroom window, a sharp, angry sound that cut through the humid Virginia night. She'd been expecting this confrontation since transferring the college fund 4 months ago, counting down the days until Elowen's summer of discovery collided with the reality of consequences. The pounding on the apartment door confirmed what the BMW had announced. Her daughter was furious, desperate, and probably realizing for the first time that love without gratitude could disappear just as completely as parents without resources. Tracy took her time answering, moving slowly despite her fully recovered heart, taking small satisfaction in making someone else wait for once. Through the peephole, she saw Elowen pacing like a caged animal, her face flushed with indignant anger. "I know you're in there, Mama," Elowen called through the door. "Please, we need to talk." "Mama. Not Tracy, not the woman who raised me. Mama." The title came back when she needed something. Tracy opened the door to find a stranger wearing her daughter's face. 4 months with the Harpers had completed Elowen's transformation into someone Tracy barely recognized. Expensive sundress, designer sandals, jewelry that caught the hallway light with confident gleam. Her hair fell in professional waves, and she carried herself with unconscious arrogance. But her eyes were wild with something that might have been panic and might have been the first stirrings of genuine regret. "Hello, Elowen," Tracy said quietly, not moving aside. "You look prosperous. Can I come in?" "Please. I drove straight here from Charlotte." Tracy stepped aside, and Elowen walked in with hesitant movements, her eyes sweeping over the living room. Still furnished with second-hand furniture, still decorated with school photos, still maintaining the careful aesthetic that now probably seemed impossibly small. "The place looks the same," Elowen said, settling carefully on the couch edge. "Did you expect it to change? Did you think I'd redecorate to celebrate your departure?" The words came out sharper than intended, but Tracy didn't apologize. 4 months of wounded silence had transformed heartbreak into something harder. "I expected—" Elowen paused, struggling. "I guess I thought everything would continue the way it always had. That you'd be here, ready to support whatever I needed." "And what exactly do you need, Elowen?" "I need the college fund," Elowen said, abandoning pretense. "Duke's spring tuition is due in 6 weeks, and the Harpers— there's been a complication with their finances." A complication. The delicate way wealthy people described financial collapse. "What kind of complication?" Elowen's composure cracked. "Sterling's company is being investigated by the SEC for securities fraud. Their assets are frozen. And Maeve's family money. Apparently there isn't as much as everyone thought." Tracy felt a flicker of something that wasn't quite satisfaction. The Harpers, with their promises of unlimited resources, had turned out to be as financially fragile as everyone else. "So the people who convinced you to abandon your scholarship suddenly can't afford Duke's tuition?" "It's not that simple," Elowen said defensively. "They're good people who hit a rough patch. These things happen. These things happen when you make promises you can't keep to impress children you abandoned." "They didn't abandon me. They were sick, and they got better, and they wanted to make up for lost time. By buying your affection with promises they couldn't deliver." But Tracy could see doubt flickering behind Eloin's indignation, growing suspicion that she'd been seduced by people better at performing wealth than possessing it. "Tell me about your summer of authentic living," Tracy said, settling into her chair. "What did you discover?" Eloin's expression softened with genuine enthusiasm. "It was wonderful, Mama. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere without explaining myself. The Harpers have this huge extended family, and they welcomed me like I'd always been part of their lives." "And what about the people who actually had been part of your life?" The question landed like a slap. Eloin looked ashamed. "I thought about you constantly. I missed our Saturday pancakes, missed talking through problems with you, missed the way you always knew what I needed to hear. But not enough to call, not enough to visit. I was trying to figure things out, trying to understand who I am when I'm not defined by being the girl you rescued." The girl you rescued, still reducing 16 years to a single act of charity. "And what did you figure out?" Eloin was quiet, her composure fracturing. "I figured out that belonging somewhere and being loved somewhere aren't the same thing." The admission hung between them like a confession. "The Harpers, they love the idea of me," Eloin continued, voice growing smaller. "They love having a daughter who makes them look good, who validates their decision to get clean, but they don't actually know me. They don't know I hate the sound of people chewing, or that I still sleep with lights on sometimes." "Those are things you learn through daily life," Tracy said carefully. "Through being present for small moments as well as big ones. They want to skip getting to know you and jump to happy family. They want the relationship without doing the work." Tracy recognized the irony, Eloin describing the Harpers' approach in terms that applied to her own recent relationship with Tracy. "So you've decided they're not your real family after all?" "I've decided family isn't about DNA or money or impressive opportunities." Eloin's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion Tracy had seen. "Family is about who shows up, every day, even when it's hard, even when you're not grateful enough." The words were everything Tracy had wanted to hear, but they came too late and carried too much self-interest to feel like victory. "That's beautiful, Eloin, but it doesn't explain why you're here asking for money instead of forgiveness." "I need both," Eloin whispered. "I need the college fund, because without it, I can't afford Duke. But I also need you to forgive me for being stupid enough to think DNA mattered more than devotion." "The college fund is gone," Tracy said simply. "I know you transferred it to Arya, but surely you can transfer it back. She's 8. She doesn't need it yet, and I promise I'll pay back every penny once I'm established." Once I'm established. Still thinking in future promises rather than present accountability. "You don't understand," Tracy said gently. "It's not about the money anymore. It's about what the money represented." Tracy rose and returned with a manila folder, documentation of the college fund's history, from the first deposit to the final transfer. "This money represented 16 years of choosing you first," she said, spreading statements across the coffee table like evidence. 16 years of working 3 jobs, of skipping meals so you could eat better, of wearing the same coat for 5 winters so you could have new school clothes. Eloin stared at the papers with growing horror, perhaps seeing for the first time the mathematical proof of Tracy's sacrifice. "Every deposit represents something I didn't buy for myself," Tracy continued. "Every $100 was a dinner out I didn't have, a vacation I didn't take, a dream I set aside so yours could come true. Mama, I know you sacrificed, do you? Because 4 months ago you announced you were ready for your authentic life with your real family, which suggested you saw my sacrifice as inheritance rather than gift." Tracy gathered the papers. "I gave this money to Arya because she looks at me the way you used to, like I matter, like I'm essential to her happiness, like she chose me just as much as I chose her." But I do love you, Elowen said desperately. More than anyone. I was just confused about balancing loving you with understanding where I came from. And what conclusion did you reach? That where I came from doesn't matter as much as where I'm going, and I want to go there with you, not despite you. Beautiful words, perfectly crafted, but they came from someone in a designer dress who'd driven 3 hours to reclaim a college fund. If that's true, Tracy said quietly, then you'll figure out how to become a doctor without my money. You'll find scholarships, take loans, work your way through school like millions of other students. You'll prove that your love isn't contingent on my ability to fund your dreams. That's not fair, Elowen's voice cracked. I can't afford Duke without that money. I'll have to transfer to a state school, change my plans completely. You'll have to live the way I always lived, making the best choices with the resources you actually have. But you wanted me to go to Duke. You worked 16 years to make that possible. I worked 16 years to give you choices. Now you're making them. These are consequences of choosing people who promised everything and delivered nothing. Elowen stared at her, finally understanding this wasn't a negotiation she could win. So that's it? She asked quietly. 16 years of love just disappear because I made one mistake. 16 years of love don't disappear, Tracy replied. But 16 years of sacrifice do get reevaluated when the person you sacrificed for announces they're ready to start their real life without you. As Elowen prepared to leave, no hug, no kiss goodbye, she paused at the door with something like genuine grief. I lost everything, didn't I? The Harpers, the money, the future I wanted, and now you too. You didn't lose me, Tracy said softly. But you can't have me the way you used to, as someone who exists primarily to make your life possible. If you want a relationship with me now, it has to be between two adults who choose each other, not between a mother who gives everything and a daughter who takes it for granted. After the BMW pulled away, Tracy sat alone in her apartment, surrounded by the ghost of 16 years of shared life. She'd gotten her reckoning, but it felt nothing like victory. Elowen would find another path to medical school. The girl she'd raised was too determined to let financial obstacles derail her dreams permanently. The question that would haunt Tracy through sleepless hours wasn't whether Elowen would succeed, but whether she'd learned anything from the spectacular failure of her summer of authentic living, whether she'd finally understand the difference between being chosen and being claimed. Whether some relationships, no matter how much love had built them, were too damaged by assumption and entitlement to survive. The mother who had promised everything to a 3-year-old stranger was learning to say no to an 18-year-old daughter, and that might be the most loving thing she'd ever done for either of them. Chapter 10. The Heart's True Home. 2 years later, Love walked back into Tracy Eleni Shannon's life, wearing scrubs from Richmond Community Hospital, carrying medical textbooks, and looking like someone who'd finally learned the difference between being entitled to something and earning the right to keep it. Tracy was in her backyard garden when she heard familiar footsteps on her front porch. 20-year-old Elowen moved differently now, with less unconscious confidence and more careful determination that came from rebuilding your life from scratch. "Mama," the voice carried through the screen door with tentative quality. "Are you home?" Tracy set down her watering can, taking a moment to steel herself. 2 years had passed since their confrontation over the college fund, 2 years of sporadic phone calls and the careful dance of two people trying to figure out how to love each other without falling back into destructive patterns. "I'm in the back," Tracy called, remaining in her garden sanctuary. Elowen appeared wearing the exhaustion that came from working multiple jobs while attending school full-time. Her hair was pulled back simply, her face free of expensive makeup, and she carried herself with humble determination. "Your garden looks beautiful," Elowen said carefully. "I never knew you were interested in growing things." "I never had time to be interested in anything that wasn't directly related to your future," Tracy replied with honest directness. They stood in awkward silence, taking inventory of how much they'd both changed. Tracy had cut her hair shorter, started wearing clothes that fit, and had developed quiet confidence. Elowen looked older, more serious, with earned maturity. "How's school?" Tracy asked. "Hard. Really hard. Community college, working at the hospital as a nursing aide, living in a studio apartment. But I'm managing. I'll have my associate's degree in May, then transfer to VCU for pre-med." "That's wonderful. You're doing exactly what you need to do." "I wanted to tell you something," Elowen said, settling onto the patio steps. "I saw the Harpers last month. Sterling got 18 months for securities fraud. Maeve is working as a hostess in Charlotte, rebuilding from nothing." Tracy felt a flicker of something that might have been satisfaction or pity. "I'm sorry it worked out that way," Tracy said carefully. "Are you?" Elowen's question carried genuine curiosity. "I'm sorry they disappointed you, but I'm not sorry that their failure forced you to discover what you're capable of when you don't have unlimited resources to fall back on." "I'm capable of more than I thought," Elowen admitted. "Working 40 hours while taking full courses, studying in break rooms, learning I can survive on determination and ramen noodles. I never would have discovered that if the Harper money hadn't dried up." "And how does that feel?" "Terrifying and empowering, like I'm finally becoming someone I can respect." They sat in comfortable silence before Elowen continued. "River and I broke up 18 months ago. He couldn't understand why I chose community college over the lifestyle his family could provide. He kept trying to rescue me from my choices, and I realized I didn't want to be rescued anymore. I wanted to earn what I had. I wanted to earn what I had." Words that never would have occurred to the 18-year-old who'd expected Tracy's sacrifice, regardless of how badly she'd treated her. "Mama," Elowen's voice grew vulnerable. "I know I have no right to ask this, but is there any chance we could start over? Build something new, something healthier?" Tracy studied her daughter's face, finding only genuine remorse and hard-earned humility. "What would that look like?" "I don't know. I just know I miss you. Not as someone who solves my problems, but as the person who taught me right from wrong, who loved me enough to let me make my own mistakes even when it broke your heart." "It did break my heart," Tracy said quietly. "Completely." "I wasn't counting days to leave you," Elowen said through tears. "I was counting days to figure out who I was supposed to be. I made the mistake of thinking I had to choose between loving you and understanding myself. And now? Now I know that understanding myself means acknowledging that everything good about me came from you. My work ethic, my determination, my ability to love deeply, all from watching you live those values every day." Tracy felt her emotional walls beginning to crack. "The college fund is gone," Tracy said gently. "I can't take it back from Aria, and I wouldn't. She's 10 now, still calls me Mama T, and she's counting on that money." "I wouldn't want you to take it back," Elowen said firmly. "That money represented your faith in me, and I destroyed that faith. I need to rebuild it by proving I can succeed without depending on anyone else's sacrifice." "There's something I need to tell you too," Tracy said. "I'm seeing Dorian again. We've been together 8 months now." Elowen's face broke into genuine smile. "Dorian Matthews? I'm so happy for you, Mama. You deserve someone who sees how incredible you are." They talked until sunset, sharing 2 years' worth of experiences and tentative hope that damaged relationships could be rebuilt on stronger foundations. As Elowen prepared to leave, she paused. "Would it be okay if I came by again? Maybe we could have pancakes on Saturday morning?" "I'd like that," Tracy said carefully. "But this isn't going back to the way things were. If we're rebuilding, it has to be between 2 adults who choose each other consistently." "I understand. And Mama, I'm proud of you for choosing yourself. I hated it at the time, but I needed to learn that love isn't the same thing as unlimited forgiveness. A year later, Tracy sat in VCU's graduation ceremony, watching 21-year-old Elowen receive her biology degree with highest honors. This time, Tracy sat in the front row as the primary supporter of someone who'd earned every achievement through hard work. When Elowen found her after the ceremony, she was carrying a single red rose, wearing scrubs under her cap and gown. She'd worked a double shift the night before to afford summer textbooks. "Thank you for coming, Mama," she said, hugging Tracy with fierce gratitude. "Thank you for becoming someone worth celebrating," Tracy replied. Elowen pulled out a small wrapped box. "I saved for 3 months to buy this." Inside was a simple silver bracelet engraved, "To my real mom, the woman who taught me that family is a choice we make every day." "There's something else," Elowen said, voice trembling. "I got into medical school, full scholarship to VCU. I start in the fall." "That's incredible. How did you manage a full scholarship?" "Turns out, working multiple jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA develops exactly the character medical schools want," Elowen said with a smile, holding no trace of former entitlement. They were impressed by someone who'd learned to balance responsibility with academic excellence. "And how did you learn to do that?" "I learned from watching the strongest woman I know do it every day for 16 years without complaining or making excuses." 2 years later, at Elowen's medical school graduation, she specialized in pediatric cardiology, fixing broken hearts, just like she'd dreamed at 8 years old. In her graduation speech as class president, she said, "My real mother taught me that love is not about grand gestures or unlimited resources. It's about showing up every single day, especially when it's hard. She taught me that family is about who chooses you consistently, who believes in you relentlessly, and who loves you enough to let you face consequences so you can grow into who you're meant to become." Tracy cried through the entire speech, tears of joy, pride, and deep satisfaction from watching someone you love choose wisdom over entitlement, growth over comfort, earned success over inherited privilege. The mother who had once promised a 3-year-old stranger everything had learned to give her adult daughter something more valuable, the knowledge that she was capable of building her own everything, one choice at a time. Love had been enough after all, but only because it had been paired with boundaries, consequences, and the courage to let someone you love fail until they learned to succeed. The heart's true home wasn't found in biology or money or even unconditional devotion. It was found in the daily choice to love someone enough to demand they become their best self, even when that process broke your heart and challenged every assumption about what it meant to be family. Tracy had raised a daughter to leave her. But Elowen had chosen to come back, not as the entitled teenager who'd walked away, but as the woman of character Tracy had always believed she could become. And that choice, that daily conscious choice to value what they'd built together, had transformed 16 years of sacrifice into something that would last forever.